Anybody okay with everyone okay? Cool. All right, thank you. Hua? Okay.
Yep, we're ready to go.
Okay.
Sorry
super.
about that.
No worries. Thank you, everyone. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, December 9th, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Selectmen. Materials for this meeting may be viewed on our town website. In accordance with Governor Lamont's Executive Order 7B, Section 1, which suspends the open meeting requirements of in-person participation, audio and video of this regular meeting will be simultaneously televised on Channel 79 and YouTube in order to allow the public to view and listen to the meeting. In-person attendance will not be permitted. Comments for the 6 p.m. public comment segment may be emailed to Jerry Shaw, and her address was listed on the agenda, until 3 p.m. the day of the meeting, which is today. Item 1 on the agenda is the first selectman's remark. Before that, I'd just like to call roll call because we can't tell who's here. So with that, I will ask you, please, as I call your name, please unmute yourself and say here, and then go back to being muted, please. I'm here, obviously. Deputy First Selectman Mika Cardozo.
I'm here.
Thank you. Joe Crisco.
Here.
Joe Dye.
Here.
Bright Rowland.
Here.
Sandy Stein.
Here.
Administrative Officer, Director of Finance, Tony Genovese.
Here.
Administrative Assistant Officer, Betsy Yagla.
Here.
Town Council, Jerry Weiner.
Here.
Our Clerk, Jerry Shaw.
Present.
Media Specialist, Pua Ford. And we have some guests here that I will introduce you as we go. First on the agenda is the Board of First Selectmen's remarks. And wow, there were only 1.5 pages tonight instead of 4. You guys should be real happy. As a result of how widespread the pandemic is in Woodbridge, I continue to ask all residents to please wear a mask at all times, especially on town property, including our walking trails and the playgrounds, unless you have a medical exemption or are under age 2. I remain very concerned that as we head into the colder months in the holiday season, our positive cases will continue to rise. Just yesterday, I received notification from Chief Cappiello that we had 6 new reported cases in one day. The positivity rate in the state is now at 8.6%, unless it went up further today. That was as of yesterday. Again, I have stressed and pleaded with everyone for many months. You must do your part to show that you care and respect each other by continuing to do 3 simple things. Wear a mask, wash your hands frequently, and maintain your distance. Some of this is a PSA for the folks that are watching from out in watching land, TV land. If you have been exposed to COVID-19 or have symptoms, call your doctor for an appointment to get tested. With an appointment, you may eliminate the long wait times. You may also visit www.211connecticut.org/COVID testing and enter your zip code or town and press the yellow search icon to find additional testing locations. Griffin Hospital in Derby has expanded their hours to offer weekend testing times. If you call 203-437-6815 to make an appointment and use the word community, you will not need a doctor's note for a test appointment. Additionally, in the city of New Haven, the Fairhaven Community Health Clinic is operating daily testing without a doctor's note. They are doing walk-ups and taking appointments. Please call 203-871-4179 for further information. As you probably will hear in more detail from Selectman Crisco, Town Plan and Zoning Commission is currently considering an application from New England Brewing Company, an incredibly popular award-winning brewery, to move from its current location in Woodbridge on Amity Road to the empty parcel at the southern corner of Litchfield Turnpike and Bradley Road. They had been courted by the city of New Haven and other towns. Over the course of many months, I met several times with the owner and the developer, along with Betsy and Tony and Jerry, and I'm so pleased that they have agreed to stay and invest in Woodbridge. There is a separate proposal also to build active adult over 55 housing units at the northern corner of Litchfield and Bradley, across from the brewery's planned new home. Additionally, an upscale wine store will soon submit an application for a permit to open at 245 Amity Road. now that our Town Planning Zoning Commission voted on Monday evening to change the regulation to make it easier for package stores to open in the business district. All of these projects are welcome additions and may help draw more customers to our existing businesses. Like many of you, I watched the November 30th Woodbridge Town Plan and Zoning Commission special meeting to consider an application which proposes substantial changes to the town's zoning regulations. The application is to amend the regulations in the town's plan of conservation and development to permit multifamily housing in most of the town's residential districts with affordable units. The application, other documents, and video of the public hearing are on the town website in the government section. Public hearing has been continued to January 4th, and anyone may submit comments virtually or by email to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission at ksullivan@woodbridgect.org prior to January 4th. The links to watch the next meeting will be included in the TP&Z meeting agenda, which is on our town website. I remain confident that the members of the commission will conduct a thorough, thoughtful, and fair process before making a decision consistent with the law. The Board of Selectmen will be discussing this matter further tonight during executive session. We continue to work against the proposal to construct a cell tower in a residential neighborhood here in town. This is a private transaction between a town resident and Verizon Cellco. But as you remember, the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously to hire an attorney to advise the town in its opposition to location of the tower in a residential neighborhood. Over the weekend, Town Council Weiner received communication from attorney Ken Baldwin, who is the attorney for Cellco Verizon. Mr. Baldwin stated that at this point, there isn't anything new to report since we last spoke. The RF engineer in charge of the site in Woodbridge is being pulled in about 12 different directions right now and had to focus on some other priorities. He reported that he still needs to review a few of the alternative sites that came to him and that Verizon is no closer to filling the siting council application at this point. I did send out an email to all the residents that have asked to be included on these updates on Friday and another one on Monday, and I believe the entire Board of Selectmen was copied on those. I have asked Mr. Baldwin for a current list of all the sites considered by Verizon Cellco to date. He said that he will try to get back to me this week. There are more than 30 alternatives at this point. As you might remember, the final decision regarding placement of the tower rests with the State Siting Council. Following my remarks, I will ask the board to discuss this matter further and possibly consider signing a contract with the engineer recommended by Attorney Bloom. Since our last meeting, I have held my monthly meetings with both superintendents. I will be chairing my last of the year SCROG meeting as chair of the Regional Council of Governments tomorrow. Betsy, Tony, and I virtually met with them and discussed with the state delegation, Senator-elect George Cabrera and Representative-elect Mary Wielander. I've attended the governor's biweekly statewide calls, ran the town's monthly department head meetings, and virtually attended this year's Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. In addition, multiple daily virtual phone calls with residents, staff, various consultants, lawyers, and municipal leaders in the area. Despite the pandemic, Town Hall remains busy. Our employees have done an amazing job of taking care of our residents. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought out the best in many people, especially in the town of Woodbridge. I have seen friends and neighbors who have shown compassion and empathy, and those who have offered a helping hand to others during this extraordinary time. I do believe that help is on the way, and until then, we must continue to take care of each other. I'm wishing everyone a safe and happy holiday season, and I thank you for the time this evening. And with that, we will move to the next item on the agenda, which is an update on the Verizon proposed application regarding the cell tower at 118 North Newton Road. As I reported in my remarks, I gave you as much of an update as we have. We did receive one public comment regarding the cell tower. I can either read it now, Jerry, or should I read it when we get to public comments?
No, you can read it now. Fine by the book.
Okay, great. I got to find it. I found it someplace else. Sorry. Thank you for indulging me. It came in this afternoon at 3:13 p.m. from Kyoko Karwowski. Dear First Selectman, Town of Woodbridge, please read my husband's email to the town for today's meeting. I'd like to thank you and the Board of Selectmen for being engaged to find an alternate solution to the 118 Newton Road site. With regards to the latest correspondence from Mr. Baldwin, below, I'd like to draw your attention to a worrisome fact stated in the first paragraph. Quote, the RF engineer in charge of the site in Woodridge is being pulled in about 12 different directions right now and had to focus on some other priorities, unquote. It was our impression that the alternatives proposed thus far were rejected off the cuff without due consideration. He continues, quote, I believe Ziad has looked at and rejected all of the other town-owned parcels that you have offered to date, end quote. 30 alternate sites is a large number to work with. Conceivably, a solution can be, quote unquote, engineered, i.e. requires sitting down and spending due time and consideration. We are concerned that 118 Newton Road is just a convenient site for Verizon, parens, site already having an access road, end parens, to stick a tower and move on to other projects without giving due diligence to the community. It was my impression from the first informative meeting with Verizon that they were not giving due consideration to concerns of the community. Note that the RF engineer, Mr. Zayed Shaiban, during the presentation, pointed out to the largest antenna in the area, the one located Seymour Business Park, and called it Ansonia location. Clearly did not study the area sufficiently before the meeting. Furthermore, Mr. Chaiban is not a licensed engineer in Connecticut, as revealed by a query to Connecticut website, and he lists the site. I do not understand why he makes decisions affecting people's livelihood and well-being. In addition, we are concerned that currently available sites with their existing equipment as is may not manage to the maximum of their capability. I'm personally experiencing noticeable cellular performance degradation on both of my cell phones since November 1st. Thank you, Gregory Karwowski, 10 South View Drive. So that's the only public comment we've received. And I included in your packet this evening a copy of the isotope proposal for your consideration to perhaps engage the service of the engineer, not necessarily sending him in any direction to begin looking at a site, because there's no site that they have chosen or have even narrowed down to. But I thought it might be important to engage him so that he is ready when and if we do need him. Maybe you want to comment on that contact, Jerry.
Well, I've been trying to talk to Ken Baldwin, who's a lawyer for Verizon for a while. I keep calling so we can get an update and we don't lose sight of what's going on. And he finally returned my call with that email. It's self-explanatory. They have told us right from the beginning that they were very far away from actually filing an application with the Siting Council. They're exploring all the alternate sites that we have provided, plus some alternate sites provided by residents, plus some alternate sites that they have chosen that might be possible. They're not moving very quickly, and I don't know if that's the good news or the bad news, but the reality is they're not moving very quickly. Our lawyer is I'm in touch with our lawyer all the time, Ira Bloom, and he, as Beth indicated, suggested strongly that we retain a consultant to review Verizon's technical reports and studies. And I think that is something that Beth will bring up now. And you have a proposal from someone that was recommended by Ira Bloom, that he knows this person's work and thought that he would be a good fit for the town. And we may be a little bit early in actually asking for him to begin services, but that's something up to Attorney Bloom. I think we would like to have the board authorize the engagement of this consultant tonight, so we are ready to go and not waste any time when we need his services.
Yeah, that's my main concern, is that all of a sudden it's going to be quiet for a very long time, and then all of a sudden we're going to hear, okay, we picked one site or two sites. This is it. Have a nice day. And I want to have this done. Just one sec, Sandy. Yeah, I see you though. I just wanted to, make sure that this person is on board and ready to go when we need this person. If indeed we do. I mean, if we have a site that is agreeable to everyone, wouldn't that be wonderful? And we wouldn't need to use him. But I think it's important to have this person on board. So Sandy, go ahead. Sorry.
So, I would agree. I think it's in our best interest to have that level of expertise available to us. What is the thinking, and maybe Jerry, you have some thoughts on this, on the authorization of funds? In other words, is it up to a certain amount, of money so that when it comes time, Beth doesn't have to come back to the Board of Selectmen for authorization.
So Attorney Ira Bloom and I will be watching this very carefully to make sure we know we have budget issues and we don't want it to get out of control. One of the things in his initial letter, you saw that he has requested a $5,000 retainer. I told Attorney Bloom, to my knowledge, the town has never paid a consultant. They retainer we pay on an hourly basis as we go along. Attorney Bloom agreed and relayed that information to the consultant, and I didn't get final word back, but hopefully we won't have to pay the retainer. We'll just be paying bills as they come due. But we have not put any maximum on it because we just have to, I think we have to see how it goes, but we will be on top of his, Tony Genovese will also be on top of his bills, and we will make sure it doesn't get out of control as best we can.
Anyone else have any comments for this? Okay, why don't I just make a motion that we engage the and then we can talk about it further should we need to. I'll make a motion to engage the services of David Maxon from Isotrope Wireless to aid the board in engineering consultant services as necessary, with funding not to exceed, but we don't really have an amount. So with Attorney Weiner and Attorney Bloom overseeing the costs to keep them at minimum.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks, Sandy. Does anyone have any comments further? Okay.
Yeah, it's Joe Dye. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Joe.
Oh,
Hello, we hear you.
Is there a consulting agreement we could look at?
No, we don't have a consulting agreement yet. That's his proposal. But we will get after you authorize his hiring, I'll have the consulting agreement, and I can do it one of two ways. I can have the board authorize Beth tonight to review it and sign it, or I can hold off and we can have another meeting, a special meeting for the board to look at it in advance and then have Beth sign it.
Jerry, we may be having another meeting this month specific to some of the items under the executive session. So we could perhaps, if the board would feel more comfortable, do it that way so everybody gets to see the consultant agreement and then feels comfortable with signing it, my signing it, if that's all right with everybody. Would that help, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to have the meeting anyway, that would be fine. Otherwise, I was okay with just authorizing, as long as Jerry and Attorney Bloom look at it and so forth. I'm cool with that. I just wanted to make sure we were engaging him pursuant to a written agreement that would have some measure of control in there, because as I understand it, he may or may not have to be doing much work depending upon what happens and when. So,
but we're keeping our fingers crossed. But Joe, I prefer exactly what you said, to give Beth the authority to sign it, subject to the approval of Attorney Bloom mostly, and we'll get some kind of a written agreement with him that will define the scope of his duties and costs and things like that, to be a little more specific than his proposal.
Okay, we'll go that way then, if that's all right with everyone. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Yeah, I need another WebEx meeting in my life, like we all do. But okay, if we do have to have one, we'll have one. But okay, so that's everyone comfortable with that. So I will add that to the motion, and with that, I will call the question. Everybody unmute yourself for a minute, and all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? I think I hear nothing. It sounds like it passed unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Moving on. We're up to number 2. Pretty good. Thanks for being patient. Good evening, Christine. I welcome you, and I'll let you introduce Dr. Budd, Interim Superintendent of Beecher Road School.
Thank you very much. Dr. Jonathan Budd, the new superintendent, is here tonight, and he will take a moment to introduce himself.
Thank you so much, Christine. And it's so good to see all of you. You have a jewel of a school at Beecher Road School. And in the days I've been able to spend there so far before I officially begin on Monday, every single thing has confirmed that. We're in a difficult position educationally in the nation with the pandemic we're in. But I have to tell you that Christine Syriac, the leadership team at Beecher Road, the Board of Education, and every single parent and teacher with whom I've interacted is totally committed to the success of the children of the Woodbridge School District. It's a pleasure for me to join you officially on Monday, and I look forward to meeting all of you and having many rich conversations over the upcoming weeks, months, and years. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be working with you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Dr. Budd. We're looking forward to working with you.
Thank you.
To go on with my report for this evening, I'd like to thank the Board of Selectmen for inviting me to share an update at your meetings each month. This is my last update, and it's hard for me to believe that 4 months have already passed so quickly. I'd like to also thank the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance for allowing the Board of Education to include the D-Wing and the library roofs to the capital budget for the 2022 school year. I believe that you have received an updated COVID-related expenditure sheet and that it's in your packet. While there has not been much change from our previous one over the month of November, the positive takeaway is that the deficit continues to trend in the correct direction. Last month's projected deficit was 104,000, and the current month, as of the end of November, it's 97,000. The Board of Education did add the funding for the food service program's anticipated loss of $18,000 to the COVID-related expenditure sheet. As we've had further discussions, it was determined that the program's loss is really due to the pandemic. The school lunch program has never been in a position to not be able to have a positive outcome in their budget in years past. We continue to look at utility supplies, overtime, and other non-contractual line items as areas for savings to try and mitigate the deficit. I also want to take this moment to recognize the food service director, Jane Roddy, and her team, who continue to think outside the box and try to increase the participation rate in the lunch program to also try to reduce their deficit. The school lunch program is extending meal offerings to Saturday. As I've already shared previously, all meals are free this year because we are part of the seamless summer option that the federal government has offered. And we are now permitted to serve meals on Saturdays. So our remote learning students and or our in-person students will have the ability to pick up when they pick up their lunch on Friday to also pick up a lunch that will carry them into Saturday. As the Board of Selectmen is aware, the budget process for the 2022 budget has begun. Dr. Budd, Al Pulo, and myself, we met with department heads last week to carry budget requests as part of our collaborative planning. We met with administration and with some teacher leaders, and we're currently hopeful that we will be able to bring forward to the Board of Selectmen and to the Board of Ed first a reasonable budget. However, that being said, we do estimate currently a 20% premium increase in our health insurance. We receive periodic updates from Brian Luciani as to current claim trends, and we hope to be able to reduce that estimate prior to finalizing our budget request in January. I will share at this time that we are not budgeting for any new staff positions. The Board of Education extended an early retirement offer, and that window closes on December 17th. and that may also yield potential savings to be included in the superintendent's budget proposal to the Board of Education. The Board of Education Finance Committee meets on Monday, December 14th, and they will continue to discuss the 2022 budget. This week, we returned to full in-person learning on Monday after a week of all remote learning that had followed the Thanksgiving break. The BOAS schools will most likely follow a similar plan for the week following the holiday break as well. Again, the same reason we did it this time, to gain time for people to have testing if they've traveled and or for symptoms to develop if in a social gathering they had been exposed to someone with COVID. The Connecticut State Department of Education and the Connecticut Public Health Department continue to advocate to remain in-person learning, particularly in the elementary grades. And so far, Beecher Road School has been able to do that due to the support of the mitigation strategies that we have in place. That's all I have for this evening. And if you have any questions for myself or for Dr. Budd.
Christine, I'd just like to say that you have been a godsend to the school district, and you have done just an absolutely outstanding job leading us through the last 4 months, which had to have been some of the toughest 4 months you've ever experienced in a row. And we really appreciate your sharing the information, your willingness to answer questions, and the transparency of your position and thoughts and ideas about a number of different topics. So thank you so much for your leadership. We will miss you, but we also welcome Dr. Budd into his new position.
Thank you very much, Sandy.
Thank you, Sandy. I couldn't have said it better. Wonderful.
Thank you, Beth.
Good luck.
You.
Welcome again, Dr. Budd. Thank you. What is your last day, actually?
My last day as superintendent is Friday. My last day in the district is next Wednesday.
Whew, wow. My goodness. You will be missed. Thank you. Thank you for keeping the ship going.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions at all? Okay. We are now on to liaison reports. Where do I start? Mika.
Yes, Beth, I did attend the Recreation Department meeting, and there were a couple of items that did come up. First, liaison from the finance was changed to Tom Kennefick. He's a new liaison to Recreation. The skating rink will be set up shortly. We're hoping, the hope is that the weather will cooperate this year as it did not last year. We didn't get a lot of use last year because of the weather. Outdoor activities, as far as permits are concerned, they've stopped with giving permits out. Tennis courts are really at first come, first serve at this point, and they are still being used. There were, as far as the financial reports are concerned, currently the expenses are at about 12, a little less than 12% under where they were last year. And we're about $50,000, a little under $50,000 off in terms of revenue as compared to last year, as one would expect. And there was discussion on the operating budget. The operating budget increases that are being proposed are limited to really salary-related type of increases at this point, with no increases. And the budget, the capital, was presented by John at the last meeting we had with the Joint Finance and Board of Selectmen. A couple of items, they're looking to move the tent from the country club, and I know, Tony, that there was some correspondence and some information that was exchanged on that, so that's something that's being considered, and a few details need to be ironed out along those lines. Again, they mentioned that there's some rot in the gazebo on the green, and I did commit that I would reach out to Adam. So Brett, I'll try to see if I'll do that tomorrow, if it's okay with you, and just have them take a look at it. And they're getting one of the facilities that is being used on the weekends right now is the pool with the Woodbridge Aquatic Club, and that's been quite successful. As a matter of fact, the usage is actually over what it was previously, pre-COVID. So they continue to do as much as they can. There's a lot of programs that are being done, obviously remotely, including arts and crafts, which seems to be very, very popular. So I really do need to commend the folks over there, Teresa, Jim, John, for what they're doing. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Mita. Joe Crisco.
As the first selectman already mentioned, the Planning and Zoning Committee met on November 30th. No action was taken on the proposal at 2 Orchard Road. There was comment from the Open Community Alliance that was formed to combat segregation and to open Woodbridge by changing the town plan of conservation and development and to change zoning regulations. No action was taken, and the meeting scheduled for this past Monday, December 7th, was canceled. The next was the Police Commission meeting on November 10th. The chief reported that the budget is, on track. However, he is concerned about UI's payment policy that is currently under discussion between the chief, the finance director, and the UI account manager. That is during emergency power restoration periods for storms and weather-related issues. The town pays the fees for the officers until the emergency restoration is done. Then charges revert back to private duty rates, and the UI reimburses us. But there is discussion going on because any change would have serious impact on the overtime budget of the police commission. Traffic enforcement continues. Also, the chief would like to continue the SRO at the Beecher School until the superintendent, comes on board and can be part of the decision-making process. Also, there is a weapons return and replacement program, and the department is replacing and returning various weapons as they see fit. As far as personnel matters, the new dispatcher has begun her training and orientation period. Once she completes all her training mandates and is proficient with protocols and radio console, she look forward to getting the staff back to full complement. There has been an issue where there were extended absences because of COVID, and the chief has had to pull those absences from shifts through overtime. In regards to the traffic authority, there was a request to install a street light on Sunset and Orchard, but the board voted unanimously to reject that. Also, in regards to the Fire Commission meeting on November 16th, the chief mentioned that there was an increase in the COVID situation. In fact, there were more residents than nursing homes. In regards to the current financial situation, everything is on track, but however, cleaning has created a custodial overrun, but they're trying to address that. As far as apparatus, Engine 3 is back in service. Also, there is a concern that the aerial truck may have to be replaced. It's a very hot topic because its cost would be $1.5 million. And that's about it for those three commissions.
Thank you very much, Joe. Yep, I said thank you. Thank you so much. Joe Dye.
Yes, I'm here, sir.
Okay,
Muted
okay, that's
myself.
okay.
I have no report. No report.
Thank you. Okey doke. Dwight Rowland.
Yep. Inland wetlands, I attended the meeting on the 18th of November. There was an application for a residential new house located at 106 Seymour Road. And that was sent, to the engineer to review and comment on. Under existing applications for 24 Center Road, the application was blessed, and they are going to go ahead with that development. It was approved by Inland Wetlands. And then at 15 Wolf Tree Drive and 21 Wolf Tree Drive, because of tree clearing and grading in the wetlands, there was a restoration plan being drafted, and it'll be submitted by their meeting within a week or so. And I was not able to attend the Human Services meeting this past Monday.
Thank you, Dwight. And Sandy.
The Library Commission actually meets next Monday, so I don't really have an update, except to share with you that the, in-person kind of express services hours are going quite well. The library is open for people to come in under controlled numbers for about 10 hours a week on Tuesday from 11 to 3, Thursday from 4 to 7, and Friday from 1 to 4. And that's been very well received. There's an average of 30 to 35 people who come on each of those days. And this is in addition to the curbside pickup service, which is now out of the community room. The other report that I have is from the Darling House Property Advisory Committee, which met on Monday. And as you might recall, when we awarded the farm leases, we decided that we would ask that committee and the Historical Society about any plans that they may have for the two properties, the two fields, Field 1 and Field 2 at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike. And both the Advisory Committee and the Historical Society, Alexia Belperin was present at the meeting on Monday, agreed that Tim Kriz could go ahead and hay those fields for this next season. So I'm not sure what process you want to put in place for the Board of Selectmen to approve that, if that's necessary or not, but that was the decision of that group.
That's probably a technical question for Jerry. You're muted, my friend.
Give me the question again.
So
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Sandy.
Oh, okay. That it is fine for Tim Kriz to be able to hay the fields number 1 and 2 at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike. There are no other plans for those fields from the Darling House Advisory Committee. And it's basically outside the purview of the land that the Historical Society oversees, but they also agreed that it would be fine for him to continue to hay those fields. So how does that get approved?
We held off our vote on those two. It's 1907 Litchfield until we.
Right. We didn't approve those leases last time. Is that correct?
For those two fields.
I'm losing you.
So do we need to approve?
So,
go ahead.
I think we should just you can do a motion just right now and approve it if you like.
Okay. Do we need to add it to the agenda because it's not on here?
We can have a 2/3 vote to add it to the agenda, and we can make the motion and we can approve those fields.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we add that item to the agenda to approve those two fields to Tim Kriz for the farm lease for next year. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Sounds like it's unanimous. No abstentions or nays. Okay, cool. So that is now added to the agenda. And with that, someone else want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we award the leasing of the field number 1 and 2 at 1907 Litchfield Turnpike to Timothy Triz as originally requested.
Thank you. Anyone want to second?
Second.
Thank you. All right, any discussion on that? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none, done. Okay, so Mrs. Shaw will let him know that he's good to go. That's great. Thank you, Sandy. That was helpful.
And that's it. I'm done.
Can everybody hear me? My computer just zoned out. Everybody went to circles for 10 seconds. It was very odd. Sorry. Wonders of technology. Okay. Thanks, Sandy. Moving on, we did public comments. There was only one, which we read. Item 5 on the agenda is an update on the old firehouse, the Woodbridge Center, the fire department storage facility, and Beecher Road School roof project with action as appropriate. So I'm going to turn over the con to Tony Genovese and David Stein, and I'll mute myself to sort of go over this with us. I guess, David, we have in our packets all of your drawings, David, and everything. Welcome, David, and Tony, too.
I think we could start with David walking us through the drawings and the floor plans.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. So I'll begin to try to share my screen if I am able, and it looks like I will try to do that if Betsy can give me permission to do so, because right now on my side it's showing I can't share. I know last time I know
I believe she's working on that right now.
Okay, great. Well, maybe in the meantime, I can, since you do have the packet in front of you, would you like me to begin? Okay, it looks like she has just had it pop up on my screen. So let me begin. Great. So is everybody able to see it up on their screen now? Great.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. So let's start with this overall site plan that I prepared for you. It's fairly diagrammatic, and my intent is that I will spruce it up, but I wanted to at least keep it sort of generic and basic as we sort of continue to develop some of the concept ideas that are here. But as we spoke from the beginning, that the old firehouse and its position sort of right at that intersection is really the gateway to, in our opinion, the gateway as you come into the town center. And our proposal is to remove any of the pavement that currently exists, and which was part of the former apron or apparatus entry and exit of those fire trucks, is to put some greenery there, but also to create some outdoor spaces such as outdoor seating on actually either side of the original bays. I think it would be quite interesting to sort of recreate that. If I go back to this view, what I'm really talking about is up front is to redo that greenery and just to create that front experience a lot better, potentially having some pavers out front. So any gatherings could happen either outside or inside with meetings. So I think that would be quite nice to do so. Our plan is to rework the parking that's there, remove all the bituminous paving, repave, create about approximately 17 parking spaces, have newly defined handicap parking spaces, and the main entry of the building will be in the rear. And I'll get to the floor plan to show you where that is. We'd like to add some pavers that tie into the work that you just recently did at the center school with stamped concrete and other type of pavers to really kind of tie into that feel, and then create a connection back over to the firehouse in which there is a sidewalk. There was some discussion of any type of connection here to the walking path, but having that connection to additional parking back here is important. because you may be limited on just those 17 parking spaces that are there. So it's really cleaning up the landscaping and the perimeter around the building, creating really just a nice landscape area that can be used beyond what is currently listed there. So our floor plan, which you've seen before, we have these labeled as Bay 1, which is the original building, Bay 2, and Bay 3. The entry of the building would bring you right through this entry into this vestibule, in which the new stairwell would be rebuilt. The elevator, a new elevator, would be placed. Currently, one does not exist. New restrooms, which would be located to the right and left, men's and women's restroom. And then Bay 3 would be for recreation. Right now, I'm just showing as placeholders, treadmills and exercise bikes and floor mats and such, but it's really an open, flexible space. We did talk with Parks and Rec on some of their needs and such, and this really provides a good space for them, and obviously also separation of equipment, as we are now thinking more about separation than we are about density in our designs these days. Bay 1 and Bay 2, although they show very different pieces of furniture arrangements, this is intended to be an open plan. It could be used for small gatherings or meetings. It can be used for artwork or different displays. And we did, when I get to the budget, you'll see we have money in there for the FF&E of different tables and chairs and storage cabinets and such, to be able to take any of that out and put that back in, whether it's a yoga class, a lecture, a meeting, a presentation, or so forth. The intent is to do a full renovation with new flooring, new ceiling lighting. In some areas, we'll have exposed ceilings, such as the Bay 3, where we'll just have exposed structure with some lighting to really give a nice look to the overall space. But again, this is a full renovation. As you recall, we've already installed majority of the mechanical systems and electrical and so forth. So we're a good portion started with that part of the project as part of the phase work we did about a year ago. Moving up to our second floor, the old meeting room, we love to recreate. That ceiling is gorgeous, and I think we have an opportunity to do something really nice here. This is the space in which Amity, and I did have conversations with them on their use up in this space, and they would use that for a classroom during the day. They would take their furniture and be able to put it in these little alcoves at night, and then the town could use this as flexible space. There's a restroom that's located up here. The kitchen would be refurbished as just sort of a general kitchen, not a commercial kitchen, more of just a warming space for them, because they will be doing some life skills type of learning within that kitchen area. There's another meeting room which will be located here, and then Amity would have they would need a dedicated office just for staff files and office work. This was the former chief's office that would be cordoned off and locked. Our new stairwell, and then there is a secondary stair as a means of egress to sort of circle back around on that. Very little to the facade of the building needs to be done, but any cleanup would be part of what we'd be doing, other than we would be infilling those existing garage bay doors that have the same look as the original building, but they wouldn't be functional doors in that regard. Moving across the street to the storage shed building for the fire department. This is a 6-bay building. If you recall, currently the existing footprint of the slab that is in place is approximately 42.5 feet by 45 feet. We would be adding another 45 feet to make it 90 feet total, and approximately overall square footage around 4,000 square feet. The bay to the left, as you see, is dedicated towards the antique vehicle, would be positioned in here, and we'd have a demising wall to keep that separate so it's secure from the other equipment smaller equipment that'd be located here. There's some pallet racking that's located. Since this is an occupied building, we are required to heat it. We are required to cool it. We are required to add men's and women's toilet and a janitor's closet. Even though no one will be working there 24/7 or 9 to 5, the building code considers it to be an occupied space. It's not a barn or an agricultural facility, which allows us not to heat or cool it. It would have a second level. You see there is a stair that brings us up to a second, but essentially that's just an open attic space for any type of ancillary storage. We produced a rendering that you saw within your packet. This is going to be a conventionally framed wood construction. The siding would be similar to the siding that you have on the existing firehouse, which is a hardy board siding. In this case, it's a sort of a vertical board and batten style. The garage doors are essentially 10 feet by 10 feet, so they are a little larger than residential, but definitely are much smaller than the 14 by 14 doors that are on the firehouse. So none of the large equipment that's in the new firehouse can fit in here. This is all for smaller equipment. The backside here has an opportunity with this high pitch roof. The reason why we created this high pitch roof is it gives you the opportunity to potentially put solar on the back end as it's solar facing, which would obviously help on reducing any of the operating costs. Our thoughts in terms of heating the building would look at what we call heat pump technology, because the intent is not to fully heat it, but we do need to keep it at least up to or well above freezing temperatures. So mainly electrical, so solar actually would be a good opportunity to consider in the future. We would bring a gas service and electrical service if anything is needed. Sanitary service would go there. There actually was already a plan for restrooms, and it's already piped for that in your existing slab that was installed. Asphalt shingles, these vents are, we would use those for any type of exhaust vents, but they also serve nice, they sort of tie into the existing cupolas and provide a nice architectural look to that. We are abutting the wetlands, so not much is happening to the back of the building. Really, the only man door or entry door, as you see, is on this side of the building. The rest are just the 6 bay doors that are located to the front of the building. And then lastly, as we shift it back across the street over to the senior center is broken up into a phase 1 and phase 2. It can be constructed all in one phase, but we have that sort of broken up based on the grant funding that you currently have in place. And I think Tony's going to talk about the dollars and how that's broken up. But essentially, the phase 1 piece of it will deal with the creation of this new glass enclosed reception office where the receptionist will sit in here. Obviously, but now due to COVID, the concern of just transmission and having a clear barrier when guests and the seniors are coming into the facility, they're able to check in and talk here. There's now a connection into the director's office. So that's part of the work would be to recreate that. Within the large cafeteria space, the intent is to redo some of the flooring, but also to redo the ceiling grid and the lighting within that space, and also add air conditioning, which we would have wall-hung VRF units, maybe 2 or 3 that would be positioned around the space to provide better air quality to this to the cafeteria. There is some smaller work that they want to do, such as to create a closet for some built-in storage and some built-in cabinets within their lounge or recreational space. As part of the phase 2, would be really to round this back out, improve on the lighting, improve on the flooring, and also look at doing some improvements to the kitchen, which is really the original cabinetry, so some built-in casework. There is the pass-through that's here, improve upon that, and then also repair of some of the flooring. So with that, that rounds out the drawings that I have. And in terms of the estimate, I'm going to bring that over. Are you also able to see, are you able to see that now? The screen that I showed,
Yeah.
which should have the estimate. Okay, great. So this was a 5-page estimate that was part of your package. Right now, I'm just going to concentrate on the overall summary. And then if there's any questions, I'll dig into the detail of the of those estimates. But the overall breaks up the 4 projects that I presented to you. I haven't spoken about Beecher because that's a project where we are not the architect of, but Tony has shared with me their projected cost. So we have that broken in here, but the old firehouse renovation, the adaptive reuse of that building is coming in at $1.39 million. The storage building at $567,000, and the senior center at $318,000. As I mentioned, there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 portion of that. And then it gets into the soft costs, which has a contractor's fee of 2%. One point that I do want to make is that this project, at least for these 3 projects, 1, 2, and 3, the intent is that one contractor would do that work and manage that work in phases. There'd be less administrative costs, and a project of this scale, to have 3 individual projects, the contractor's fee would be much higher, because essentially you'd be paying for that 3 times their overhead and profit, their individual management. So by streamlining it and having a contractor work on all 3 over a phase period is much more economical. We have a design contingency, which, since we are now in just schematics and not designed yet, there is a number there that will eventually just morph into and populate into those numbers as we better define and make those real design decisions on materials and selection. The owner's contingency, which is essentially your money that you keep in your back pocket, assigned to unknowns. Once we dig into the ground, we may find something. Once we open up another wall that we find a steel beam or another conflict, that's what that money's for. And for scope changes, for items that you, as the project progresses and becomes real, most clients begin to look at and say, I wish we would did this. Could we, now we have some money to actually spend, let's do that. So we would recommend that we would recommend that you create some bid alternates here. So if there is money left over at the tail end of the job, you can make those decisions. A projected A&E fee at this point is just a placeholder. There is material testing that is required, such as the foundation testing per the building code. There will be some utility connections from the utility company. Your bonding or borrowing costs, Tony could talk about that number as he provided that to us. You will be waiving your building permit fees, but the state does require a fee for that, and that's approximately $1,000 or so. There is builder's risk insurance of about $7,000, and then we have just sort of an allowance for any printing or advertising costs, bringing it to a total project, all-in project, of anticipated at $3.524 million. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
David, it's Mika. How are you?
Hi, Mika.
Take me back to the additional building at the fire department, and just get into a little bit more detail as to why we've always referred to this as a shed, as in terms of whenever we've discussed it. My thought has been that it would be for storage primarily. So explain again, why does it have to be something that's considered that it'll be inhabited, and why can't it be a storage barn or something along those lines?
Yeah, so the building code requires a building, even if it's storage, that it needs to be heated or cooled. We are required, once we put lights in the building, essentially the energy code kicks in and I need to insulate the walls. So even if it was a pre-engineered building, because it's storage and defined as storage, we are required to. There are size limitations. So if this was a single bay, for example, it may be small enough that you would not be required to do it. Sheds in, for example, residential, within the residential code, if you have a shed, a storage shed, you're not required to bring power. Even if you have power, you're not required to heat or cool it. But within the building code, this is listed as S2 storage, which would mean there'd be vehicles stored there. It could be small vehicles. And I'm sure the chief could talk about his other, I'm sure he could respond to some of the equipment that would be there. But even if it was a smaller vehicle, because it's a fuel storage vehicle, it's required to be an S2 category, which means we need to heat it and cool it. And essentially, it's considered unoccupied building.
Along those same lines, David, what is the proposed use for a second floor on this building?
Just essentially storage. We were already creating that attic space, so it's really just attic. It's one stair. You can see. I mean, it's not intended to be an occupied space, so I do not have two means of egress. I do not have an elevator. It's essentially just taking advantage of the attic space.
How much of a cost is it to have that second floor, the extremely expansive roof, all the windows, the cupolas on the top? I mean, it's a beautiful building, but it's hardly, I think, as Mika was alluding to, our vision of a storage shed.
Well, we need to build a roof. So that roof structure is already there. Obviously, the dormers are an added item, and the cupola is an added item. But we still need to put shingles on it. We still need to structure it. So the access to that is a relatively small amount to put plywood on the top of the trusses and to add chain, lights on chains, LED lights, and such. So the added item architecturally is the dormers and the cupola. That is, in terms of that cost, $30,000-$40,000. I think that's probably a range of what we're talking about with the vertical element and the dormers. So that's really the added cost. We still need to structure it. We still need to put shingles on it. There are obviously other architectural elements that we're trying to tie into the existing building to complement that. It can be simplified, but that's not adding significantly to the overall cost of the project. The main cost of the walls, the foundation, the doors, and the heating units.
Tony, at any point in time, were we looking at $600,000 for this type of a facility, for this type of a structure?
I would say, what's up?
Were we envisioning, something of that magnitude?
Well, when we originally started this, this concept goes back many, many years, and has been in many, many iterations from. Quite frankly, just a small shed to something much bigger. I don't think we ever had a drawing or an estimate get this far along where we had a better idea of how much it would cost. But it was never discussed that it would be anything along those lines of $500,000-600,000. That was discussed as a part.
If I remember correctly, wasn't it something around $200,000, most of which ended up going to just the slab as a result of what we needed to do?
The original budget was, the original budget that was approved was about 180, and we spent 140 or so on the slab, maybe, and on some architectural drawings, and then the original budget we discussed was probably 250. Yes, you're correct. Back when we first started discussing this, 250 to 300,000 was the sort of the area where we were discussing.
But Tony, was that for 2 days or for that?
No, it was for smaller. It was for a smaller. It was for the good, David. That's an excellent point. That Mika, that was for the smaller version, which would be 45 by 45.
Right. So I just trying to put that into context in terms of square footage. So, that was essentially a 2-bay facility. We are essentially doubling that. So, if your projected numbers was 250, we're
50, yeah.
Yeah, if you were around 250, we doubled the size of the building. Here's where we are. It's coming out to about $150 a square foot, if that means anything in terms of overall, cost.
And Dave, is the reason for the double? Is that as a result of your conversations with the fire department as to the reason that the space has doubled? The requirement has doubled?
As part of the programming, the request is yes to do that.
Well, Mika, Dwight, what we did was when we voted to move fire out of the old firehouse, okay, what we did was we actually then, one of the things we voted on back when was to actually move all the equipment, everything out of the old firehouse, and to double the size of the original size of the 42 by 45 shed. So what we did was we voted to keep the old firehouse totally in town control for town use, and to move everything, all the hose, all the foam, okay, the light trailer, everything over to the storage facility.
And I certainly don't mean to regurgitate a lot of the stuff that has already been discussed, but when we were putting the shed in to begin with, it was with the intent that we were going to move the material out of the old firehouse. And I don't know if there was discussion as to whether or not we were going to leave things in the old firehouse or not. But, and don't get me wrong, this is a beautiful building that the town will be proud to have there, but it's $600,000. And, we just heard from the report earlier from Joe that there's also a need for an aerial truck at $1.5 million. So, my thoughts go more toward the need. Is this what is required? And are there options that we could look at that would help us do less and maybe be able to afford an aerial truck or something along those lines? So that's the reason for my line of questioning.
Mika, Dwight again. If you recall, the original request for the new firehouse was 25,000 square feet, and then basically it was agreed that we would build a firehouse of 20,000 square feet, and then we would, Ed Sheehy, when he was first selectman, said you can use the old firehouse for the remaining 5,000 feet you requested. And basically what we wanted to do was, we don't want to leave everything over in the old firehouse. Or, as we voted on the last time, I think David did give us an estimate of about $150 a square foot for this new shed. So, and that's what we voted, okay, to go ahead with, with that understanding, and that everything would get moved out of the old firehouse into this storage facility. So, because a lot of it has to be conditioned space. You have hose that has to be conditioned. You have foam and everything else, which is going to be stored in this facility. So.
This is Beth, David. Thank you for this. This is an absolutely gorgeous building. It's lovely, and it'll tie in nicely. My question relates to the fact that is it possible to bring the cost down but keep the same space needs, because that's most important. Obviously, we have to meet the space needs with maybe not. You know, I hate to see any of it go because it's lovely, but is there a way to somehow compromise where we get it closer to what's a manageable number, Tony? I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe when we get into the weeds, because I mean, obviously we have to do this because otherwise we'll never get this. I definitely want the old firehouse to become a total community space, and I think that's what we all agreed on way back when, as Dwight said. But the issue is just, is there something where we can? It sounds not cutting costs, but you know what I mean, making it more palatable in terms of the cost without cutting any of the absolutely needed services that they need to make this work.
Yeah, so we absolutely can get into, it's really the devil in the details, which adds the cost, as you probably all know from just doing work in our homes, right? When you could choose one versus the other. So design is always a compromise. So there's clearly items that you see here that you can check off. And I think goes back to Sandra's question as to, you know, how much are we spending on the roof? Can we simplify that in a way? Can we look at the materials that we're using? So yes, there are absolutely design choices that can reduce the cost. You will get to a point in which the cost will be the cost. There's not much more you can do.
Of course.
We also don't want to be short-sighted and simplify it to a point where there's added maintenance in the future and such, but you know, we can have those discussions. The question is going to be, what number are we trying to get to? So for us to sort of better answer what can be achieved, we need to talk about to what range is more palatable, and then we could work towards that. If you ask me, can we cut the price in half? I would say I don't think we could get there and build a building for $75 a square foot. I think everybody realizes that. But if we're asked to shave 10%, 20% off the top of the project, I think it's absolutely manageable.
Okay, it's one of those getting back and sharpening your pencils again, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, because it's absolutely lovely. I really commend you. It's beautiful. It really is. It's gorgeous. And I mean, clearly, I don't think any of us want to compromise on, you know, the service that we get from the fire department. In addition, I think we all agreed, and I'll say it again, that we should not, no offense, but we don't want to leave any fire people behind or equipment or apparatus or anything in the new build, in the old firehouse. That we want you to be 100% community building, unless I'm wrong. So I guess I'll ask anyone else, maybe Joe or Joe, have any comments on this project or any of the other items, and we can continue to talk about it. I didn't have in mind that we would vote to do anything at this point. Clearly, I think there's consensus that we need to revisit the firehouse design a little bit and see what we can come. And as far as this, I have nothing else on the senior center or the other project, but maybe others do.
I have two questions. One is, how much space is being taken up in the old firehouse by the current equipment? Is it 5,000 square feet?
Yeah, it's actually a little. So the first floor of the old firehouse is about 6,500, 7,000 square feet. The total square footage is of that building, including the first and second floor, is 8,200 square feet. So the old firehouse was 8,200 square feet. Mm-hmm. Upstairs is a little over 1,000 square feet. So we're about little under 7,000 square feet on that first floor. The two bays, just the bays themselves, if you don't take away all the other space in the center, are roughly 5,000 square feet. Yeah.
Okay. My other question is about the senior center. And has there been sign-off by the services director, everything that you've proposed, because I would want to make sure that we've included everything that is needed in that estimate.
Yeah, we met with Jeanette and presented the plan. We went out there and met with her. Tony and I had conference call with her, and we've adjusted the plan accordingly and actually added to that phase 2 budget to make sure we don't leave portions behind. We didn't want to go 75% on the project, and then people would be disappointed with making, why didn't you do certain areas, for example, in the lounge area, trying to upgrade the lighting and such, and the ceilings in that space. So yes, we did consult with Jeanette as part of this design exercise.
David and Sandy, I don't mean to interrupt, but can somebody mute? It's really.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you're not talking, please. Got to unmute again. If does anyone else have comments?
Yeah, I got a question for on the roofs at the school, Beecher. That number that the school gave us is an actual cost just for the work. It doesn't include any architectural fees. It doesn't include anything. David, it just put in the estimate as a holder the cost of what the work, the estimates they got from other roofing firms. So Tony was going to contact them to find out how much, what would they add for architectural fees and everything else. So because those aren't included.
So I did contact them, Dwight, and they indicated that they are at this point comfortable with the figures that they provided, including all of the costs that would be related to the project. I made sure, so they're going to go back and double check to make sure, but at this point they are comfortable with the figure they gave us. But because when we met, there wasn't 100% clear, and that was the number they gave us for the installation of the roofs for the restoration. I didn't know it included any bidding documents and whatever. So that's all. Architectural fees and whatever. They will clarify. That's a good suggestion.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Additionally, Tony, if I'm not mistaken, David's numbers do include percentages for contingencies. Design is one of the contingencies. So there's 7% or 5%, David.
Those, David, the 2%, 5%, and 7%. Those tied to the
on the total.
On the total, correct?
Yes.
Right.
Which includes a roof. So
includes the roof.
In that sense, there's money in there for those types of things.
Right, and that's why your owner contingency I included up at 7%. So we could better, once you get into the design, you'll be able to allocate to what contingency. Some may, obviously the old firehouse is going to have a higher contingency than the shed. That would have a higher contingency than the senior center building. So yeah, you're going to adjust that. Right now I'm just showing that as a lump sum.
Joe Dye.
I'm sorry?
Joe Dye, any comments, questions? Sorry.
No, I'm listening. I have no comments other than the ones already made. I think we got to go back to the drawing board, particularly on the quote shed.
Yeah.
And the only other item, Beth, is I know that David showed us the diagram with the parking and the asphalt, and also obviously the diagrams all include furniture, etc. So I'm not sure if we're looking to get any additional detail as relates to that, as far as what the costs would be along those lines. But certainly this gives us an idea, and I think, like you said, it's just a matter of seeing if we can shave it to a point where it's really more manageable. And particularly considering what we're going to be talking about in a little while as far as the dispatch is concerned.
Thank you. Joe Crisco, do you have any comments or questions?
Oh, no, they're already made.
Okay, thank you very much. Tony, perhaps you might want to walk us through the next set of.
Can I just make one comment, Beth? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
I just think that, and this is not David's responsibility, but I think that it has to be very clear how we moved from an 8,200 square foot old firehouse to a 20,000 square foot new firehouse and still need 5,000 square feet to be built for the fire department. I think that
I can sort of answer that as far as being on the Board of Selectmen at the time. Actually, I was a fire commissioner, I think, and then I went on the Board of Selectmen right after. But it was always, I believe, understood that we were going to find a storage shed because it was never going to be enough if we wanted them out of the old firehouse. If we wanted to keep the old firehouse for fire department usage, then we leave it the way it is and don't do anything. But if we want to have a community building, because the original plan for the original firehouse was indeed 25. I was on the building committee. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dwight, but I think it was 25,000 square feet was what was determined to be needed. So the 20 now, I'll get it. That's why we did it. We did it.
That was correct. We had a plan for 25,000 feet, and the Board of Selectmen came back and they opted. They said, make it 20,000 feet, but you can use the existing old firehouse for storage and for for your hose storage and everything else for the time being.
I could kind of answer. I could answer a little bit of the question, Sandra, too, in terms of programming, because I lived through designing a 25,000 square foot building, and then I was asked to design a 20,000 square foot building.
I remember well, Dave.
Yeah. So, you're right. You're questioning. Wait a minute. They only had 8,500 square feet. How did they go? And they doubled the overall square footage. Well, the reality was, even at the time, and we're going back to 2005 when we were originally hired to actually do this entire exercise. So can't believe it's been 15 years since that was the case. But I remember it clearly is that most of the equipment was stored outside in Connex boxes, or apparatus was stored outside. If you go in today to the existing building, some has been sort of shifted around, but those 3 bays were pretty full with the equipment. So the old firehouse, those bays are full with equipment and storage and supplies and such. And as part of the programming, things have changed significantly in terms of the type of equipment fire departments are using to fight different types of buildings. It's not purely just structure fires any longer than it used to be. There are many different motor vehicle accidents, a lot of response to medical and such. So they have a lot of different type of equipment. We do a lot of this type of work of emergency service facilities, and especially on the volunteer side, they need the larger space for training. That was probably the biggest thing that increased their overall square footage from where they were before. This is really their ancillary storage that has been over at the old firehouse that now needs to move over. So that's really the programming piece of it. So hopefully that sort of frames you at least some of the history of where they were. There was a lot of equipment that was just stored outside that eventually now came inside.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
Beth, you're on mute.
I'm trying to behave myself, not make noise. Apologies. If it's okay with everyone, I would now ask Tony to sort of talk us through some of the financial pieces to this, if you're.
I can do that.
Thank you very much.
If you want to share my screen from David, that would, I think, be helpful.
Stop sharing. You should be all set.
Very, very big David. Now a very big Tony. I got to get back to grid view here. Okay.
So the first thing I wanted to show you was the funding as the project currently was presented. as soon as my screen is shared. And you received the breakdown in your package. I was going to put it on the screen. So the total project cost was $3,524,691. There we go. And there are several funding sources for that we have currently that I want to identify. The first is grant funds for $128,205. The second is there's a town match for the senior center project of $10,000. So essentially, the of the $318,000, 138 of it is grant funds or previously earmarked town funds, and the remaining 180 is for the bond presentation. The storage facility currently has $33,830 remaining from the previous budget when we installed the foundation. And the old firehouse fund has about $63,000 remaining in it from insurance proceeds. So that leaves.
Tony,
yes.
Did you intend to show? I'm sorry, you're not sharing your screen.
I know. I was attempting to, but I haven't been.
No problem. I just wasn't sure if you were. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
I have put it on for Tony.
Oh, it just popped up. Good timing, Jerry. All right. Could you see? Let's see. Can you see my screen now?
Yes. Thank you.
You can see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So you can see here in the spreadsheet sort of lays it out for you. The different funding sources, which leaves the remaining funding at a little under $3.3 million. So that would be a bond issue for 20 years at $3.3 million would be about $762,000 in interest. So what I wanted to do is just sort of update our schedule. We did this back in September. Let's see. So we did this back in September, and this is sort of our existing debt structure. I thought it'd be helpful just to review this so you can get a sort of a refresher as to where we are. For the upcoming year, we've got just under $2.3 million in principal and interest and Amity overlapping debt of a little under $1.6 million. So that leaves us with $3.8 million in direct and overlapping debt service for the upcoming budget year. So you can see I added in the $3.3 million issue, which would first have a principal and interest payment in 22-23, and then paid out over a series of years for 20 years. There's then a $5 million issue, which we had previously to just for any other debt that may come along. Most notably, the police department renovation or the center building renovation is another project that's been discussed. I think the best way to look at this information is graphically, so I've done that. And this is where it is graphically for the town existing debt. And if you put on the proposed debt service, which is the $3.3 million, and the $5 million, you'll see how it layers into the existing debt. So that there's a slight bump up here, but it's smoothed out to be able to take advantage of the payments and the payoffs in slight one in 24, and then there's a big drop in 25, where we've pay off from 2005. We've had some debt just paid off. Then if you add in Amity's debt, another big benefit is that their debt is declining as the large project from the early 2000s is paid off. Their debt goes down significantly. Whenever they have new debt proposed, I always try to add it into this schedule to reflect any proposed debt that they may be thinking of. In terms of to take this schedule you have here and create a match that with our projected operating budget for the next, say, 10 years with a reasonable estimated increase in the operating budget. You can see that the direct and overlapping debt is just under 8%. And anything at 10% is usually frowned upon. That's sort of where we like to keep below. Even below 9% is helpful. So it gives you some room in case you have an issue come up where you can borrow some money and still not be above 10%. So I think to be at 8% is in a good place. Direct and overlapping debt as a percent of the grand list is another issue that's our fiscal indicator that's often sort of looked at in terms of how much debt do you have and whether or not you should take on new debt or you should pay off more debt. What I did here was this would be our total debt as a percentage of our grand list. So what I did here was I looked at the state. So our percentage in 21-22 is 2.3%. So I looked at all of the state, and the state average is 2.5%. So that's a little under the state average. I also looked at the average for AAA communities, of which we are one. And while there are 2 or 3 communities that are at or above 2.3%, there are several that are much lower because they have such large grand lists. So the average is about 2.5% for AAA communities. So we're a little above the average there. Debt per capita is the third one. And our debt per capita for the 21-22 year would be 25.26. And the state average is 25.80. So we're a little under the state average again. And a AAA average is 27.44. So as you can see, we're below the AAA community average for debt per capita. So this just here gives you an idea where we are with our debt picture.
So, Tony, does this actually include the additional debt from this project?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
So if you see here in the red, so if you see the red, that's the new project that we were just discussing, and that flows through into these 3 charts.
Okay.
And
so I had thought. Go ahead, Mika.
No, that's fine.
Well, I'll ask a question. Tony, interest rates, as I understand it, are quite low. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you, in your humble opinion, is it perhaps a good time to, if we were going to agree to do this, good time to borrow money?
Well, I would never encourage you to borrow money unless it was something you really felt was necessary. However,
all right, given that if we think this is necessary,
it's necessary, then yes, this is an excellent time to borrow. And I think it's an unusual time. David, are you still on? Did David Stein leave?
No, I'm here.
You're here. Okay, so typically in the past, we've had a situation where, if interest rates were low, costs to build were high. And so I can tell you that interest rates are the lowest I've seen in many years, maybe since I've been keeping track of our debt. But what about building cost to build?
Well, we're in a unique time that we've never seen before, where typically our escalation costs are predicted at between 3 and 4 to 5% a year escalation costs. You'll notice I didn't show any escalation costs, projecting that this would be a 2021 project. We would start somewhere, say, in the spring. I'm not showing 2021 escalation on this because our industry was hit so hard, although there was essential construction that was taking place, hospitals, roadways, things as such. Much of construction stopped and it has remained flat. So based on that, we are seeing competition out there in the public bid market that's yielding you considerable savings. I think combining or packaging the project with these 3 sort of fits in the wheelhouse of a relatively good-sized general contractor that you will see. Those are probably the contractors that were hurt the most. And I think you can see savings there. So that's how we built or projected the estimate to be. So you are sort of a unique perfect storm between, low interest rates and such. The projections 6 to 8 or 9 months from now is going to be a different story where we think it will be supply and demand at that point. But right now, within the next 6 months, everyone's projecting it's a buyer's market.
That's the unique situation that I find that we're in. I would, I always like to say that even though the debt picture looks good, you always have to remember that there's always something always comes along that you never thought you would plan for that you have to address. And that's happened several times here at town. And that's the one thing I can say is that it'll probably happen again. So.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, David and Tony. Anyone else? Comments, questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question, Tony. Remember Amity. If Amity does come in and we do sign an agreement, we haven't shown any monies coming in from Amity to help support or at least to help with the funding of the renovation.
That's an excellent point. We have spoken to Amity, and while they've expressed interest, without having an actual project, and I know they had some. You met with them about the design, and there's very little in the design, David. Correct if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, that is actually as a result of Amity. I mean, they were able to live within the design of the facility. Correct.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and they occupy, just the majority of the second floor. They would not occupy any part of the first floor.
So the debt service of 270, 230, 220 in the first 3 years would be offset by a potential lease revenue for this use of the space on the second floor. What that amount is, we don't have a figure yet.
That's a good point, Dwight, though.
So I think that would be really important to have firmer numbers and a firmer commitment from Amity in terms of before we ask the voters to give us the funds to actually go forward.
So the only issue we've had with that is we've started and stopped a number of times on this project. And so, it has been since 2006 since we've had this building, this condition.
I would agree with you, Sandy, but if we can't get an answer regarding that, I would still prefer to go forward with this because, as Tony said, 26 to delay this because Amity can't, because Tony and I meet with Dr. Byers every month, and she's assured us that they're interested.
Right. I know that it hasn't gone to the board, though, so there isn't any formal approval for this.
We can continue to push, but if we get to the point where they're not in a position to tell us yes or no, I still would prefer to not hold up this whole project just because of that personally going to the voters. I just say we don't have a number, and we're hoping, but let's do it as is at this point, So
there still will be an increase then, Tony, in our debt service. This is not just retiring.
There's a slight increase in the, you look at the first year to the second year, there's probably a couple $100,000 in the first year, but then in the third year, it's back to where it was before the project. So it's really 1 year. And if we decide to go forward with this, we could work to smooth out that first year and spread it out over the first few years. I mean, typically when you do that, you pay a little more in interest because you're delaying principal a little, but we could smooth that out a little so that there's really no increase over the first few years. If that's the goal, if the goal is to have no increase in your debt service, you smooth it out a little, you pay a little more in interest in the long run, but you have a better impact in the short run.
I think that's a key decision factor that should enter into this because, again, I feel like we went through a very trying budget period last year. And so if we're saying that we're adding more debt, that's a hard sell. because, we're asking to, remain stable or to continue to cut expenses, but yet we're proposing additional debt service.
We can certainly do that. Work to smooth it out so that there's no impact on our debt.
Okay.
Yeah, my concern is if we postpone it, we'll be in that, we'll go into another year of, and then as David said, who knows, we may be, it'll be a market of the builders.
I'm not suggesting postponing it, Beth. I'm suggesting that we look at all aspects.
I agree.
And really, come to the residents with the tightest proposal we can that would encourage them to support all of these needed improvements that have actually existed for many, many, many years.
Exactly. I think we're on the same page. Good. Anyone else on the board have any other questions or comments at this point? I think what we'll do is we'll send our friends back for sharpening pencils with some of the comments from the board, and we'll take it up again in January if that's okay with everyone. Okay. David, thank you very much. And to Dwight and Paul Kirikos, who worked with you, and Tony as well. Thank you very much for bringing us this evening.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Night. Take care. Happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you. Bye-bye.
Stay safe. Okay. Moving along, we are up to item 6, which is the solar map project with Emily. I think I saw Mackie Dykes on at one point, Betsy, but I don't see him now.
Hi, I'm here. Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. There you are. Yes, thank you. And Jerry, I know Jerry Weiner is going to be involved in this as well to help us through this. So if you recall, I can't remember when because the whole year has flown by in many ways, but the board did agree to go forward with solar project at the, correct me if I'm wrong, Mackie, at the Public Works facility and the new firehouse, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So maybe just get a quick run through with this PowerPoint. We did send this out today to the board, so they do have it as well. And then we can talk about this contract. Thank you.
Great. Well, thanks for having us. My name is Mackie Dykes. I'm the Vice President of Financing Programs at the Connecticut Green Bank. Also have Emily Basham with the Connecticut Green Bank and Alan Sabins with CSW Energy, our technical consultant for this program. So just to finish that, bringing everyone up to speed, we started back in 2019 meeting with town staff to identify some potential projects. We did some site visits and then scoped some potential projects, which that meeting you were referencing, First Selectwoman, I think it was back in May, where we brought the results of that initial work to the Board of Selectmen for 2 projects at the new fire station and the Public Works building. After that meeting, we were given the approval to move forward. The letter of intent was signed, and we got to work on developing these projects. We secured the incentives. We did some further design, and we then we came back and went through some preliminary pricing for what we thought the power purchase rate would be. And based on positive feedback from that meeting, we moved forward with procuring a construction partner for both this project as well as 4 other towns that we're working with. We were hoping that by taking these projects and combining them with multiple projects from other towns, we could get better pricing for all the projects. And I'm pleased to report, as you'll see here in a minute, that strategy bore out. And we're going to be able to present much better discounts to your electric rate than we initially anticipated. So we're back here for the sort of final meeting. We've got all the final pricing, all the contractor lined up, and we're ready to move to execution here on the agreements. So just to quickly remind you, the way this works is the Green Bank and our partners would actually own the solar systems. We will sell you the power from those at a rate that's cheaper than you purchasing that same power from your utility. So we cover all the upfront costs. There's no money out of pocket for Woodbridge, and we'll build the systems, and so you start saving money right away We're responsible for all the O&M and fully overseeing the construction and everything of the system. So diving into the details here. So the new fire department and the public works building, initially we looked at, so you're paying just under 12.5 cents per kilowatt hour there. When we initially talked, we thought we could do a 10-cent PPA and a 10.4-cent PPA. After the results of the RFP, we're able to do 7 cents for the new fire department, which is a 43% discount to what you're paying now, and 9.3 cents, which is a 25% discount for the public works building. So on average, with these two projects, you'll be saving just under $10,000 a year, and over the 20-year term, expected to save just under $195,000. So the next step from here would be I think included in the packet is the template PPA, the power purchase agreement. It's still subject to review by the town attorney, but I think we're just looking for sort of general approval here, subject to his review, and then we would move forward with executing for each of those projects.
Thank you, Mackie. I will remind everyone as well, I don't know if you said this or not, but that these are not going to drill into the roofs. These are going to be sitting there, so no one has to worry about leaking or things like that. And before we go to Jerry, I just ask if anyone has any questions for Mackie on the actual presentation.
Mackie, I do have a question. This is Sandy. When would the construction piece actually start, and when would we start the actual purchase of the electricity? What's the timing on that?
Let me see. All these projects, so we've got overall 17 projects across the 5 municipalities. By September is when we're hoping to have all of them up and running. I'll dig into to my numbers here and pull up the exact numbers for these projects here and answer that question in a minute.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions at this point?
Yeah, who's responsible to repair of the system if something happens?
We are.
Storm.
The Green Bank. We're responsible for those costs, and we're incentivized to get them done as soon as possible, because if it's not producing, you don't pay anything, and we don't recoup our investment in the system. So we monitor them very carefully to make sure that they're producing what we expected.
Thank you.
Anyone else? So I'll turn it over to Jerry Weiner. I know you had this is a rather large agreement.
Right. So I started to look at it. I haven't finished it. I have a few comments to make, but that can be done after this meeting with Mackie or whoever else is looking at the agreement. It seems absolutely fine, with the exception of 1 or 2 modification suggestions that I have. But I would, as Mackie already said, if the board is prepared to go forward with this project, I would suggest that we vote on it tonight, approve it, subject to the few changes, the modifications that I will be making to the agreement, and the board has a copy of the agreement, so we can move the project along as quickly as possible.
And this is Emily. I just want to jump in to answer Sandy's question. We expect both of these projects to come online by July.
Okay.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you very much. She saved you.
Teamwork.
Yep, that's how it goes. Okay, so anyone have any other comments or questions from the board? Is anyone interested in moving forward as Jerry suggested? And if so, would they like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward with the solar map project as outlined by Mackie. I think that it's been very thoughtfully approached. There's been a lot of work and involvement of people from the town as well, and that we are being responsible citizens of our state by moving forward with the Green Bank. They've done a lot of great work in Connecticut, and I think that the savings speak for themselves. So I would move that we proceed with the solar map project as outlined for us.
I think what we have to do is agree to have authorize me, Jerry, if I'm wrong, to sign the power purchase licensing agreement with Jerry's modifications.
I would just add to that, Sandy, and the first select woman is authorized to sign the agreement subject to town council's review and possible modifications.
Okay.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. I think that was Joe Crisco. Anyone have any other comments or questions on this?
Yeah, it's Joe. I have a question. What's the motion?
The motion, Joe, is that we move forward with approving the solar map project as it was outlined for us and giving authorization to the first selectman to sign the contract once the town attorney has had the chance to make the changes that he feels are necessary with the Green Bank.
Thank you, Sandy.
And we have a second. Okay, great. All right, now I will ask everyone to signify if they approve, to say aye, please.
Aye.
And then, and are there any abstentions or nays? Hearing none, I would ask everyone to go back and mute yourselves again. Sorry. And it passes unanimously, I believe. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Take care. Where are we here? Item 7 on the agenda is the Administrative Officer, Director of Finance's report. A is the monthly update. Tony, I'll turn it over to you.
Can we unshare Mac's screen?
I'm working on it.
Thank you.
Yeah, we got a big gray box here.
Let's see. I don't know if Betsy, if you can do it, but I am. There we go.
You've done it. Thank you.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep, all fixed. Thank you so much. I'll turn this meeting part now over to Tony. Tony, you have to unmute yourself, my friend. There we go. Yay, thank you.
So, thank you, Beth. So I have a report through November of 2020, and the report shows a year-end deficit of $120,000, which is combined with our annual appropriation from fund balance of $400,000, leaves us at about $520,000 reduction in our fund balance, or at about $6 million, which is just under 12% of our annual expenditures. Our tax collections are currently projected to be on budget with in the current year, and are on par with our collections from previous years. So our tax collections continue to do well. Our investment income continues to do poorly, and we have a deficit of $110,000 at the end of the year. As we discussed earlier, interest rates to borrow are historically low, which also means interest rates for investments, in the short term particularly, are also historically low. So that's why we have a shortfall in that budget this year. Our short-term rates are 0.06%, where they were 0.5% when we did the budget, and close to 3% at the beginning of last year. So you can see how they've fallen. Our department charges are projected to have a deficit of about $54,000. We do have a deficit in transfer station due to the bulky waste fee that we did not implement. And additionally, we've seen a drop off in shortfall in some of the fees that we've projected from the haulers. So the deficit in the transfer station stands at about $80,000. We have seen an uptick in activity in the town clerk's office. We have a $15,000 surplus projected in their town clerk fees, and a $10,000 projection in building permits. So, and we did have an increase in our budget this year for conveyance fees, and those also continue to do well. So those have offset the shortfall in our transfer station fees. The transfer station, if we've seen reduced tonnage from haulers, we've seen over the past few months, we've seen possibly some of it's declined. As a result, we also have a surplus in tipping fees that we pay to dispose of the waste of about $50,000. We're looking into the decline in the tonnage and the possible diversion of waste elsewhere. And so when we have something on that, we'll certainly let you know. Benefits are projected to generate a surplus of about $100,000. We have some savings in workers' compensation premium and some healthcare savings there. And when I had originally done this report, they had not come out with their figures at the Board of Education. Then I stood at $103,000, and now the deficit is at $97,000, as reported earlier. So that improves our deficit at the year end slightly. The good thing about that deficit is that it's going in the correct direction, which is from 120 or so to 103 to 97. So the Board of Education is clearly working to try to eliminate the deficit as best they can. So we do appreciate that. We also, which I did not put in this deficit, in this projection, but we have received, excuse me. We have received notification that we've received $36,000 in FEMA funds through June 30th. And we've already received about $77,000 in coronavirus relief funds already from the state. That's also through June 30th. So we have over $100,000 in FEMA reimbursements. These are expenditures that we made last fiscal year. And those have already been booked last year. So the grant funds that come in this year will go towards the fund balance this year, unless they're used for another purpose. We are currently have received notification that the coronavirus relief fund at the state will be soon accepting information for expenditures for the July 1 through 12/31 period. And so we do have some expenditures for that, and we will be submitting those expenditures. And we are awaiting, hopefully, the Storm Isaias, which they have not currently opened up yet, but we're hoping that we'll be able to receive reimbursement for those expenditures, which is about $200,000. So we do have some positive news, hopefully, on the horizon, and we'll let you know as soon as we hear from that.
So Tony, does that actually mean that we already have over $100,000? That's $110,000 from FEMA and
that's correct.
COVID. Okay, and then a possible $200,000.
Well, that's the expenditures. So it depends what percentage they reimburse. Sometimes it's 75%, sometimes it's 50%, sometimes it's 60%, depending on what they reimburse. How the outlay is. I didn't include it in here. One reason is, we just received the FEMA money, so I didn't put it in here because it just came in after I did this report. But.
Right. And that actually is my question in terms of, can that be used then to offset the deficit as opposed to
absolutely
designating, just putting it in fund balance?
Yes, it'll offset the deficit. That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Anyone have any other questions for Tony on that part? Hearing none. Okay. We'll move on to funding requests. And you have in your packet line item. This is actually a line item transfer, number 2021-09 and funding request number 2021-10 in the amount of $12,095 and $15,000. It's pretty self-explanatory related to the presidential election. This is the deficit for the town clerks and the registrar's office. They received $12,095 to offset from the state, and the rest is ours. So with that, I'll make a motion that we move forward with this funding request. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Sandy. Any discussion or questions on any of these items? Hearing none, I will call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposition or nays? Okay, that one passes. Very good. Thank you.
I just want to make one other comment, Sandy. I was just thinking of one thing to consider is that along with all the transfers that you have in front of you this evening, our contingency would be at $60,000. That includes the a legal transfer. So, and we haven't hit the winter yet. So that's one thing that sort of offsets the grant funds. Is that, you know, we've used a lot of contingency so early in the year, which is unusual for us.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. I agree. I think that there could be other uses for it, but it's not something that I would say definitely goes into the fund balance.
Right.
I do feel that there needs to be some flexibility there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
Thank you. And I'd also like to compliment both the town clerk's office and the register of voters for the excellent job that they did in our election. I mean, we really had no issues. It was very easy. And I know they worked really, really hard to make it that way. So a big thank you to them.
I agree. Completely. Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have line item transfer number 2021-11 in the amount of $8,524. This is for the additional fund cleaning at the firehouse that we heard about earlier in the evening. And there's a comment about coming from grant money. And I know, Tony, you could just perhaps address that issue where the grant is coming from.
We did a similar transfer back in July, and that was for $8,524. It was about the same amount. And so those are expenses that we incurred from July to December that we'll be applying for a reimbursement from FEMA that we in the coronavirus fund upcoming. It's because it's an expenditure in the new fiscal year. So, but what we did was we used receipt of grant funds to sort of front the money so that they can use those funds. And now that we've received those grant funds, we'd like to, this is an example, Sandy, to use those grant funds to assist the fire department in additional cleaning through the rest of the fiscal year. If we have the opportunity to apply for those reimbursement for those funds, we will do that. There's been no announcement of any reimbursement, however, after January 1st. So whether or not they have an additional round of that funding, we're all, I guess, waiting to see what happens.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. That's a very good use of those funds.
Okay, so I'll move acceptance of line item transfer number 2021-11 in the amount of $8,524. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or any other comments or questions? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any abstentions or nays? Hearing none, that one passes. We have another funding request that came in yesterday, I believe. Tony, maybe you want to take this one, funding request number 2021-12 in the amount of $45,000 from contingency.
So this is to fund the variety of legal issues that the town has been facing in recent months. And the budget is currently low as it is. And so this funding request will help to, we've had a number of issues, which Jerry can attest to, that we've had to do over the last 6 months and have used some of our legal funds. And we anticipate having more, as you know, in the next 6 months. So this is to help fund that account so that we have some funds for the next few months at least.
It's not Jerry. It's pretty much hiring outside counsel for a lot.
It's not for Jerry specifically, but he's
right. We have lots of, yeah.
So if I can say one thing now, I just want to make it clear to everyone that this is the most unusual period of time in terms of litigation and related cases that I have experienced in all the years I've been here. Just to name a few, and I don't think I have an exhausted list. You all know we have a zoning case that's pending. That's the Orchard Road case. We've retained outside counsel who's an expert in zoning matters. We have the cell tower issue, and we've retained outside counsel for that matter by a individual who has had experience with cell tower cases. In both those matters, we're going to have to engage consultants. We've just had an application before the Planning and Zoning Commission to amend our zoning regulations, which is something that we take seriously, and we want to make sure it's done right. And we've had a small engagement with outside counsel who has helped with zoning amendments in the past. We have an active adult community coming up next month or next week for approval, which we've had to look at. We have two remaining. We have a zoning board of appeals pending in the Superior Court concerning a piece of property in Woodbridge where the homeowner has taken appeal of that decision. We have two remaining tax appeals pending. We've settled many in the last several months, but we have one involving the Willows, and we have another involving a private homeowner in Woodbridge, and those are both in court. We have the appeal at Amity High School regarding the turf installation that was taken by an abutting landowner to Amity. Concerning the approvals that were given by the Planning and Zoning Commission for Amity to go ahead with the installation of the turf. We have a couple of other cases that were brought against the town, which thankfully are being handled by our insurance company. We've got the insurance company to agree to step in and assume responsibility for those cases. Those are just the top of the hit parade, and I know there are a couple more out there that I haven't even thought of. But it's been very busy, very time consuming, and it's going to be, unfortunately, something we've never experienced before, in that our legal budget is going to be under stress. So I think that's what Tony is trying to get some additional funds for.
That's correct.
Okay, I'll move acceptance of funding request number 2021-12 in the amount of $45,000 from contingency. And is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Sandy. Anyone have any questions for Tony and or Jerry about this? It's pretty straightforward, unfortunately. We have to hope that it's a good winter.
Right.
Okay, so I'll move the question. All in favor of this motion and second, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or nays? No, wait, nays or abstentions? Getting tired of this. Hearing nothing. Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And then I know there's something else on the agenda before we get to the other couple things. Authorization to lock in the fuel pricing. There's nothing in our packets, correct, Tony?
Right. This is a prospective authorization because we are going to be going out to bid for fuel. It's diesel and gasoline. We're going to lock in pricing the end of next week. And it's currently is our a regional purchasing cooperative that we run here in Woodbridge. And it involves the town of Woodbridge, the Woodbridge Board of Education, the Amity School District, Orange Board of Education, the town of Orange, and Region 16. So it involves a number, and Bethany, the town of Bethany, and the Bethany Board of Education. So that's 8 or 9 entities. And so we run it here in Woodbridge, and we collect all the data. And you typically have an hour to make a decision because it's based on the market, and the market rates change quickly. So we would not have time to get the rates, get the pricing, schedule a meeting, get the approval. So
we've done this many times.
8 times in the past.
Keep my phone near me these days. So I guess we need a motion from somebody to authorize the first selectman to sign or to agree to this purchase, correct, when Tony gives me the number?
Correct.
I don't know how to word it, but something similar.
I'll move that we grant authorization to the first selectman to lock in fuel pricing based on the recommendation from Tony Genovese.
Thank you.
Second. Okay.
Dwight, any questions or comments for Tony on this? Hearing none, I'll move of the question. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Hearing none. Okay, thank you. That's done, Tony.
Okay.
I know you would like to give us an update, budget document update.
Yes, a very quick update, but I thought you'd find it interesting. So the budget document is going to be receiving an overhaul probably over the summer. The Government Finance Officers Association is rolled out a new type of budget document, which is designed to be more of a virtual budget document with an online budget with charts and graphs and links and more ways to sort of dig into the information and to provide a more virtual but a more a better experience in understanding town's finances and where things are spent and why things are spent. And so I just thought you'd find that interesting, that instead of having just a book, a 150-page book that could be sort of boring to read through, and this will be more of a virtual sort of real-time experience. It's kind of interesting. We're looking forward to transitioning to it, and so I just thought you'd find it interesting. That's all.
Yeah, I think that's.
Thank you.
Who is the vendor for that software?
So we're currently looking into a few different vendors that are designed their software around this program that's put on by the Government Finance Officers Association, which is a nationwide award program. And the goal of the program, obviously, is to provide a document that is easy and informative for the residents to understand about their government, not to get an award. It's so that you have the document that meets certain criteria. And so there's a few vendors that are designing their software around that and deciding. Yeah.
So who actually will make the final decision in terms of the software company to go with?
So Karen and I are researching the information, and then we'll present it to the board. The Board of Finance is who controls the budget process, but and it'll be most likely in next year's budget, because we're gonna start it over the summer and do it with our adopted budget from this current year.
Mm-hmm.
That once it's adopted in May, so we'll use that budget. So really, we won't start working on it until probably June or till July, and then have it completed over the summer, so that we can work all the bugs out. So the next budget process, not only will it be more user interactive for the residents, but also for the board members, because you'll be getting the information in more of a virtual platform.
Sure.
As opposed to just one of these.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other towns that are doing this as well?
There are, yeah. There's a number of other towns. It's a requirement of the program. So a lot of the other towns that wish to be part of the program have to be doing the same type of thing.
Okay. Is there any kind of like bulk purchase in terms of if, there were 15 towns that went in on the same program?
Good question. We can definitely look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you for that update. We do have an other, and we weren't sure we were going to be able to get a personnel committee meeting in, but we did. So we must add, I respectfully request that we add an item to the agenda. I will move that we add a personnel committee update report and an action is appropriate to the agenda under other. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Dwight. Any discussion on that? I will ask everyone to vote on this, whether they approve or not. Please, if you approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or nay to this? So now we've added to the agenda, and with that, I can tell everyone who wasn't part of it, Dwight, Sandy, and I are on the personnel committee, and Tony was with us as well. We had a personnel committee meeting. Was it today?
Today. today.
Okay. Yep, it was, that's right. It was this morning. We were able to schedule this. And with that, I will turn it over to Tony for the intros, and then we'll hopefully vote to do something fun. Hopefully, did you all get the packet sent out with the resume, et cetera? Went this up? Okay, great. All right, go ahead, Tony. Thank you. Sorry.
Sure. So their personnel committee met to discuss the vacant senior center director position that we have here in town. The position was remained vacant ever since Jeanette was promoted to the human services director position. And Jeanette is essentially doing both jobs, sort of a hybrid of both jobs, and is doing a great job at keeping them both afloat. But the time has come to hire a senior center director full time. We have in the budget for the position to start second half of the year. It was removed the first half of the year, not knowing where we would be with the pandemic. But Jeanette has maintained a number of programs for the seniors, and including the lunch program, the transportation program, and as she has indicated many times, it's more important than ever to provide services to this vulnerable population in times of isolation. So she's worked very hard at that, and so we've the subcommittee of the Human Services Commission had we went out to a job notice and received a number of applications, and it was a unanimous decision of the Human Services Commission and of the hiring panel to award the position to Christy Moriarty. Christy is currently the program assistant in human services for the senior center. The senior, that's what I understand, many of the seniors have advocated for her, and think she would be a great addition to the staff. And so that's the recommendation for the board.
Anyone from the personnel committee have any comments on this? And then we can make a motion and have a discussion further if needed.
I mean, I will just comment that we did explore who the qualifications of the other applicants, so that we would have something to benchmark against. And we're very pleased with the recommendation.
Thank you. Anything, Dwight?
No, other than we are hiring within. We are hiring within. So, and she already knows the system. So it's really, the learning curve is not that big.
Good point. Thank you for that. So I'll move that we hire Christy Moriarty to the position of Senior Center Director. I think we discussed a salary of not to exceed $55,000. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And I wonder if there's anything else I need to add. Beginning December 14th?
Yep.
Right. Okay. I didn't write it down, so I'm going from earlier memory of the day. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on this? I'm delighted to do this. I think it's going to be wonderful. Jeanette's really been hanging in there for a long time through this COVID thing. So I'm pleased that we can do this at this point. So I'll call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any abstentions or nays? And it is unanimous. Okay. Thank you very much for that. And sorry we didn't get it in the agenda. Sometimes these things happen.
Can I ask one other of Tony?
Sure.
I like that other.
Yeah, I like that too. Could you just share with us where the Board of Finance is in terms of providing direction to the operating departments about the structure of their budgets submissions?
So the Board of Finance met, and they were sort of loose on their suggestions or recommendations on how the departments structure their budgets. I think there was discussion that if there are any additional expenditures for COVID, that's something that they would department should not do, and that if there was something did come up that was an additional related expenditure related to a pandemic, that they would address it at that time. So they didn't want to see any additional expenditures for the pandemic. They did say that in terms of, because a lot of the departments have reduced expenditures.
Right.
So along those lines, that each department head should evaluate their program and make an honest assessment as to whether they think they'll be able to provide it in full. And if they can, they should do so. But if they cannot, they should adjust their budget accordingly. There's no hard and fast rule. You know, there's no percentage given. There was no 1%, 2%.
Thank you, Tony.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you. We're moving on now. Nothing other, right, Tony?
No.
Okay. Item 8 on the agenda is the Assistant Administrative Officer's Report, and I will turn to Betsy. Thank you.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Got 2 quick items to report on. The Economic Development Commission's been very busy. They've created 2 surveys. One is currently available on the town's website. It's a short survey for residents about their consumer habits and what kind of businesses they would like to see in town. And it's only 10 questions, and the EDC is hoping that they'll be able to use this to help realtors and commercial property owners bring in businesses to some of our vacant spots. They're also working on a program that's still in the development phase right now. It's called Woodbridge Bucks, and they're hoping to unveil it later this winter. It's the concept is a gift certificate that could be used at any participating business in Woodbridge. So they're trying really hard to figure out how to really encourage people to be shopping and dining locally. The other thing I wanted to update you all on is we're working on setting up another pop-up testing site in town. The clinic we used last time is unable to help, excuse me, and the state has put me in touch with 2 other testing companies, and I'm meeting with both of them tomorrow. Depending on their preferences, we may do it outside at the high school parking lot again, or we might do it inside at the center building gym. I've been given the green light to use that space by the Department of Health's building inspector if the testing company wants to do an inside location. I'm hopeful that instead of just a one-off thing, that we might be able to do a regular event, ideally maybe monthly or every other month, to kind of deal with the demand that we saw last month. So once I have more details, I'll be able to update everybody on where and when that will be at. That's it.
Thank you, Betsy. Thank you very much. Yes, Sandy.
I love the idea of Woodbridge Bucks. I think that's really terrific.
It's very clever, and I hope we're able to pull it off. I think it would be well received.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Betsy. Item 9 on the agenda is the acknowledged receipt of the town clerk's reports. You have them in your packet. I'll move that we accept them as received. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments on this? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposition or nay or abstentions? Hearing none. Now we're cooking with gas, these next few items. Let's see. Item 10 on the agenda is the regular meeting minutes approval of November 10th, 2020. I will motion that we approve them as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion, additions, edits, changes? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 I think it's unanimous. Hope so. Okay, next one is the Board of Selectmen special meeting of November 23rd, 2020. I will motion that we approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sandy. Any additions, comments, questions, changes? Hearing none, I'll motion that we approve. Is there, I'll call the question, sorry. I'm getting tired of all these motions. Aye.
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 Okay, any abstentions or nays? Hearing none, unanimously, that has passed. And let's see, item 11 on the agenda is the resignation, who will be sorely missed, Mike Holland from the Economic Development Commission. You have his resignation in your packet, and we will accept that obviously with deep regret. Hopefully he'll come back at some point. He was really a good addition to that board, but life got in the way. He's been so busy. So with that, we'll move on to appointments. We have in our packet we have an opening for to replace Mike on the Economic Development Commission to June 30th, 2021. And I believe I think it's a Democratic slot. Does anyone have any nominations? Anybody out there?
I'd like to nominate Donovan Lofters.
Thank you. We have his CV in our packets, and we interviewed him. He's going to be a good fit for this board. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Any discussion or questions? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Okay, we'll vote on Donovan Lofters to fill the CDC spot. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any nays? Sounds like it was unanimous. Call in later if I make a mistake. Don't hear it. It's hard to hear all these. Okay, thank you. And also, in a good thing, Donovan, as you can see, has a great financial background, and he has agreed to fill the very, very long vacant investment committee at-large position, which we've been looking for a very long time. So I will move that he be. Is this Jerry? Do I have to vote on this, or do we have to vote on this, or is this just my appointment? I can't remember.
This is your appointment.
Okay, so I will do that. I will move that. I will just state that I'm going to appoint Donovan Lofters to the position of at-large for the investment committee. They meet quarterly, 4 times a year. So we'll have enough. Sometimes we have difficulty getting quorum, so this is going to be great. So that takes care of that. Item C under number 12 is the Conservation Commission to June 30th, 2023. And you have I can't remember who resigned, but this is also a Democratic spot. Are there any nominations to fill this position to 2023?
Beth, I'd like to nominate Tim Austin for the position on the Conservation Commission.
Thank you. Anyone like to second it?
Second.
Thank you. He is, I was fortunate enough I realize he's Kathy. If anyone knows Amity High School, he's Kathy Austin's husband. And if you can see from his resume, he's got good creds for serving on conservation, in addition to he's a member of the Research Association board member. And he's looking forward to it. It was a very good interview, and I think he's going to serve well on this commission, if I may comment on that. With that, are there any other nominations? Hearing none, I will call the nomination of Tim Austin. All in favor, please signify by saying
aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
Just a question.
Go ahead, Joe.
Dwight, are I notified of these appointments to provide any nomination?
Well, I don't think so. They were Democratic spots. I guess we could have done that. I apologize if we did not. We sent the resumes out last week, and I apologize. They're Democratic spots.
Okay. The only reason I ask is I recall recently that the Republicans had an open spot on Board of Ed, and we nominated someone, and then the Democrats went ahead and nominated their own Republican. So I thought maybe that was how it's done now. I don't know. So it seems to me if that's the new process, then the opposing or the second party, if you will, should be also given an opportunity, even if it's, like in this case, a Democrat spot. The Republicans should be notified and allowed a nomination. Just a comment.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Okay. Item 13 on the agenda is schedule of meeting dates for 2021, and you received a revised edition of a couple of little typos in there. And hopefully you've all had a chance to look this over. And with that, I will move that we approve the revised Board of Selectmen meetings for the calendar year 2021. And thank you, Jerry Shaw, for putting this together. Is there a second?
Excuse me, Beth, may I make a comment?
Yes.
I just noticed that I did not add the date for January 2022, which is what we normally do.
Okay.
So I would like to add that date, and I'm not quite sure what the date would be. But if there would be some way that we could just say, and the second Wednesday in January 2022, I will put the correct date in there.
I'll tell you what it is in 1 second. I'm flipping through my.
Oh, good.
I believe it's January 12th.
Okay.
Is that correct? Anybody have any?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
January 12th, that's it.
Good. Okay, super. So we'll add that with that friendly addition. That will also be January 12th at 5 p.m. With that, I will move again. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any other comments or changes? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. That gets us to Town Council's report.
So my report is exclusively dealing with the executive session. So I would ask Beth to move into executive session on item 15A, which is requires Mike Boucher in the session with us, and then we'll have to come out of executive session after that is finished, and then have to go back in for the last two. We can do B and C together because the same individuals are appropriate for both B and C.
Okay, thank you. So I'll make a motion that we enter an executive session under 15A to discuss the preliminary report of Mike Boucher. I know he's with us. Boy, you are a trooper. Sat through this. Who was a consultant that we engaged to review dispatch and security pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-200, parens 6 and parens C and parens 1-200 CE and 1-210B1. So I've moved that. Is there a sec? Oh, invite Mike obviously in to join us, and Tony, and also Jerry Weiner, those three folks to join us with this. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Well, and we will be coming out after this executive session. Okay, so we just have one item to go into and then coming out again. I'll call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay, we'll ask the folks that are not invited, sorry, to turn off.